Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NBA Top Shot Office Hours. We have a special edition today where we will be talking with Justin, the lead economist for NBA Top Shot. It's very exciting to have him here to get a little bit of information about who he is and how his role impacts the Top Shot product. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, to get started, let's kind of dive into your experience with Top Shot as a collector. Was this a product you were interacting with and collecting prior to joining the team?
Yeah, definitely. So I had actually been collecting for about 4 months prior to joining the team. I got started with Top Shot as a collector back in January. So I found it probably the same way a lot of you all found it through through kind of the word of mouth virality that took place back around that time period. And I had some college friends or a group of friends I've known for more than a decade, dating back to college, that found Top Shot and introduced me to it. And I had some initial questions, and I wasn't really well versed in NFTs at that time. So I kind of wanted to figure out more broadly what an NFT was and why I should really go down this route. But I'm the type of person that when I find something that's enjoyable or interesting, I become very obsessive with it. So I started by reading broadly on NFTs and joining Discords and asking some very simple, straightforward questions. But as I got more comfortable, I decided to jump headfirst into Top Shot. Unfortunately for me, my friends got a little bit of a head start, and they had joined and had, at the time, readily available packs and were able to access access Top Shot that way. And I had in my want for information, I had set myself on a little bit of a delay. And once I joined Top Shot, it was a little more chaotic to get a pack. Pack drops were a lot of clicking and hoping you got lucky. And at that point, I decided to jump straight into the marketplace. So I'm a Hawks fan and went to Duke. So my first two purchases were a season one Trae Young and a season one Zion Williamson. And I just saw this as a platform to express what I liked most about basketball in the NBA, and that was the team I like in the Hawks and the players I like to follow, and that it's a lot of Duke guys. And then also, as you all know, around that time, that was also when Cool Cats first dropped. So I got started collecting Cool Cats with Cool Cats Drop 1, and soon became enamored with the Discord and was listening to office hours religiously and just wanting more and more clarity about the product and the direction of the product, and wasn't shy to ask questions or gather information any way I could.
Perfect. And so, I do remember you being in and asking a whole lot of questions on the regular. So now being on the other side, I guess, when did you decide to join the team where you were like, this is, what I need to do and kind of transitioning from a collector to the other side of the curtain?
Yeah, so like like you said, I was asking these questions pretty early on, and you and some of the other community members were very helpful around the Discord, and Jacob in office hours and answering them. But I I felt such a strong pull that I was just so invested in the product. I was obsessing over it, and I was waking up, and before I got out of bed, I was on my phone browsing the marketplace, and I was browsing it from work, and I would come home and look through it again, and I was looking for deals, exploring what I thought might be mispricings, figuring out what moments weren't fully distributed yet, before we had the great breakdown that we now have on site. Um, Trying to figure out where the team would go next with challenge requirements. Really, like everything that like is Top Shot, I was spending time on, and I was putting pack contents in spreadsheets and figuring out where where the product was going next. But it reached a point where it was like I layered a full-time job already on top of my full-time job. So I basically sent in a resume, sent in a completely unsolicited two-page cover letter that was like, here's what I think Top Shot needs, and laid out a bunch of things that I was very, very naive at the time, and basically pitched myself for the role that I'm now in. And a few months later, ended up joining the team at the end of May. I think it was the last week of May. So I've been here maybe 7 or 8 weeks now. And yeah, it's been an exciting 7 or 8 weeks. Met a ton of very brilliant people working on all kinds of great parts of Top Shot, and I think we're going to make good progress. I'm very optimistic about the future here.
I am also excited and optimistic about the future here. I guess to give us a little bit more insight into your background, you said that you sent in unsolicited, your resume, this two-page cover letter. What sort of relevant experience and background did you have that you were bringing to the product that kind of sold it for the team and got you where you are?
Yeah, that's a very valid question, and I think like the economist title is pretty vague. So I actually spent the past decade plus in what I would term more traditional finance. Um, Working specifically in market related roles. I was at an investment firm where I was trading a variety of assets, but primarily stocks and options, and also managing portfolio risk. So some of the granularity there is I was structuring options trades and looking at risk, doing individual stock research, identifying opportunities, constructing portfolios. But really, the things I liked best there were finding new investments and interacting with markets that lacked price transparency or things that were a little more thinly traded. So the former was really what got me into Top Shot. Like it felt like a new opportunity that wasn't widely understood yet, and I I really get the sense, and I had the sense back then that like this was a very um, nascent field. Like NFTs, we all know what they are, but when you go around and ask people in everyday life, I don't get many yes, I know that, I'm familiar with them. Um, so I felt the full potential wouldn't be seen for many years, and I had a habit of holding investments for plenty of years, so it didn't really bother me that people didn't see the value proposition I was seeing as a collector, or even the value proposition I saw in joining a company that a lot of people had not heard of. So I I enjoyed that opportunity, and yeah, I had great fun as a collector trying to pick out where buyers or sellers were maybe being a little too impatient, and where the specific dynamics of the market would move supply, or move price significantly. And that was really like what I sought to bring internally to the team here at Top Shot, is that perspective, and that in-depth experience around markets as a whole, both liquid and illiquid ones.
And I think that's really interesting because that's something that, given the very diverse backgrounds and also goals and objectives of our community members and, people collecting Top Shot, there's a lot of different ways to be a collector. And so being able to bring those various
Yeah, for sure.
perspectives amongst the team is
And
really huge.
yeah, and I learn a lot from community members and reading Discord and reading Twitter, and I I also learn a lot. Like part of what I learned from my background being so unique within Top Shot is that every other person on the team has a unique background to me. So I get to learn from everybody that we have internally, and it really gives me a broad perspective that I think is helpful to understanding where we need to go and what we've already learned in the past, that we can build on.
So, and speaking of Twitter, you have a Twitter now too for the Top Shot Economist.
I do. We launched that, what, on Wednesday, I think. Yeah, so We're hoping to use that as an outlet for more regular communication, um, and really to explore going a little more in depth publicly with some of the data that we have or look at on a regular basis. We haven't quite figured out exactly what the cadence of that's going to be, but we do want to explore being more transparent and more inclusive of the community with the data around things relating to the economy.
Right, it'll definitely be exciting to see how that evolves because getting more data into the community is something that has been frequently requested and something I've also been working on. Um, but that is actually a good segue into what exactly your role is, because this is something that when it was announced that Top Shot was hiring an economist, the community kept going like, what does the economist do? So maybe you could give us an overview of what it is that your position encompasses.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think we, when I joined, it was definitely something that we had to put together because we didn't have um, a huge team. We had people doing everything I do, um, but it was people from all parts of the company chipping in, and they still do. So I'm working with a lot of different teams internally. Anything that touches packs or pricing of packs, the contents of packs, the mint size of packs, the marketplace. I'm a voice, but I'm far from the only voice on these things. And I'm regularly learning from the rest of the teams on all these things, where they've been working on it for much longer than the 2 months I've been here, and have figured out certain things that don't work already and routes that we can pursue in the future. Recently, I've been doing work on figuring out how to restructure challenges and quests. So we've been focusing more on accessibility, and that's really due to uh, the changing nature of Top Shot. And in the early days, and you were here and I wasn't, so you know this better than I do, but you could buy as many packs as you wanted, and you could really complete a whole challenge just from packs if you wanted to buy enough packs, and got lucky enough to get all the components through pack purchases. This is obviously like no longer viable at all. So we went from a situation where people could buy packs and get themselves halfway to a challenge completion, um, and then buy the rest on the marketplace to where at best you're now one moment inclusive and you have to go to the marketplace for the rest. So we're rethinking the accessibility on that and figuring out where a more permanent solution can fit in. But we're iterating and learning. One thing I've enjoyed the most, and it truly does not feel like work, is literally working alongside Austin, who's our great head of content here, in terms of picking and sourcing the actual specific plays that make it into Top Shot. So he comes in every day with a ton of great highlights that he suggests and wants to put into Top Shot. So I've gotten the great opportunity to work with him and figure out what players can and cannot fit in sets. If there's someone that we have too many specific moments for, maybe they did have a great play, but maybe we have to pass on them this time. Um, what makes sense to use as a challenge reward versus what makes sense for the pack pulls themselves in terms of both value and excitement, and in terms of what sort of long-term distribution are we wanting for specific players' plays within the Top Shot universe. So we both, and the greater team as well, because it's more than just the two of us, know that there's a lot of stakeholders in this, um, and it's a tough balance. But we try to treat every one of those situations with care. What else have I been doing? I've worked closely with our marketplace team, which is another collection of like very bright individuals. So we have a pipeline of specific features that we're pretty aligned on needing long term. Um, but they've continually made me aware of like the unfortunate reality that it really takes real people, real time, and we can't just snap our fingers to put things into motion. So we have a great list of features, months and months of backlog of things that we want to put into Top Shot that I'm pretty confident are going to make it a better place for all the collectors out there, old or new. Um, one of the other things I think that I worked on was the multi-level drop system that we came out with on Wednesday for the, and then there were four packs, and this was an extremely heavy lift by the engineering and product team. So I really thank them for bringing it to life. Like when my team went to them and asked for it, they had already been kicking around the idea for a while, and we worked together to make sure we could bring it to life and bring it to life in a way that we hope we can iterate on and improve in the future, including making it flexible so it doesn't always have to be exactly three cues, um, and also flexible so that we can determine how many packs to attribute to each cue, which we didn't get a chance to do with this first rollout, but we think that that flexibility in the future will give us some good avenues to explore distributing packs in a little more unique method than we've been available to in the past. Um, yeah, I think like other than that, really, it's mostly just um, certainly working closely with the collector score team and figuring out requirements for specific drops. We're already talking about what we need to do for collector score in future seasons to make improvement, not to changing the collector scores that have been set for season one and two, because we're not interested in any rug pulls or anything, but to figure out how to make better in terms of what the collector score, because we have a clean slate working forward. So we need to learn from some of the imbalances and improve there. And I think we're on the right track to do that. And then really it's just every day waking up and talking to other bright people who have tons of good ideas on scarcity and the right balance of moments, and figuring out what's scarce enough to be valuable as a collector, but making sure that we have moments that are also common enough that new collectors and hobbyists find Top Shot approachable, because we do want to make sure that we have a product that can bring in um, the millions and millions of NBA fans around the world, and we want it to have that global reach, and not be a niche NFT project.
Right. So there's a lot that goes into your role and kind of the different ways that you are, working with the team to impact the product as we're moving along. But also, one of the things that I think that, the community's asked about a lot is the economy itself. And so to you, I want to pose the question, what types of data are used when evaluating the economy status? Or, like how do you go about checking the temperature and perhaps moving the needle a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, the obvious one is that we're interested in the price of moments. And I imagine most people listening to this are also interested in the price of moments. But that's not really the only thing that we look at. I would also consider a couple of the other pillars of what I would term marketplace health to be volatility and dollar volume. And volatility is important because we we want something that can be seen as a stable project where you know what you're getting. We don't want prices to be moving 10% or 100% in a day or a week or whatever in either direction, because that's not healthy for people trying to build collections, and it's not healthy for people who have existing collections. But we're also looking at, I think dollar volume is more important than just price, because what dollar volume really tells you is it ties together price and liquidity. And like if prices go up, but no one can sell, that doesn't really help anyone. And in order to really look at these in a holistic view, we need both of those. But we're also all looking much, much more long term than the day today. So I mentioned earlier that at my past job, I had a very long term time horizon, which I appreciated. So I was able to look years into the future with any investments I wanted to make. And that's what we're really focused on here. Like what these moments are worth in 5 or 10 years matters to us a lot more than what they're worth in 5 or 10 days or weeks. So where that really leads us is that we're we're trying to focus more on retention and growth, knowing that we already have a certain number of season one moments that'll ever be made, and very soon we're going to be wrapping up season two, and that'll be all the season two moments that'll ever be made. Um, but in order for the product, in order for this economy to be healthy going forward, we really need to focus on making sure that we retain the interest of all the collectors that we have, but also make a product that new collectors want to jump on board of. And we've seen that we can capture the attention of new collectors in the past. We've done it before, but we need to find ways to keep building on that past success and set us up to make Top Shot exciting and make sure that everyone wants to be a part of this community. Did I lose you, Candy?
I was muted. Sorry. So, what I was going to ask is, as we're continuing to, you know, try to attract more users, and that's something that definitely, we'll be doing as we're pulling people in and getting them hyped about the product and collecting. Um, One of the ways that we do that is actually through packs, because opening packs is an exciting part of the Top Shot experience. But it kind of comes with a caveat that it also increases the supply of moments. So there's a definite trade-off there from, I would say, an economy marketplace standpoint. What are your thoughts on the balance of packs versus supply and, how that impacts the economy overall?
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that we talk about as a team every single day, literally. And like you said, we know the pack experience is one of the most exciting experiences on Top Shot. So we understand that collectors love it, and we need packs to be a part of Top Shot in order to basically to make everyone like I guess the way to phrase it is that packs are the most important way that we can get new collectors comfortable with what Top Shot is and show them some of the great avenues of collecting that we have to offer. And we've found that packs are more approachable than the marketplace, which is sometimes a little daunting for new collectors. So we do want to focus on figuring out ways to get new collectors packs early on in their journey. But like you said, that does increase supply. So we're working consistently on figuring out the proper balance here and trying to figure out, especially for new collectors, how we can get them packs without increasing supply to a point where existing collectors feel like we're hurting we're hurting the value of their collections. And we're experimenting here with some creative solutions. But specifically around the base set, that being available and accessible is of critical importance to us for the long-term success, and long-term getting more collectors interested in NBA Top Shot. So we have a lot of data here, and we're looking to create a self-sustaining economy, but also an exciting ecosystem and collector experience for everybody, new and old alike. And we do realize, like, I actually have been just in the past couple days looking at some interesting data around this, and around how efficiently we actually find that collectors are getting the moments that they want, or at least that it seems like they want from the data into their hands. So we actually have an overwhelming large amount of collectors who build their collection primarily through packs and not the marketplace, but these aren't people who are buying packs and then selling the contents. Like, in reality, most of these people are buying the packs and then keeping the contents and building up their collection stably and consistently through that. And it's certainly not the only way to collect, but it's one of the ways to collect. And some of the data I was looking at on that is actually about 75% of the moments that have been opened in packs are still with their original owner. Um, so, so really that means there's only about a quarter of moments left, that have ever been sold on the marketplace even once. And when we boil that down to moments that have only been sold a maximum of one time, so someone pulls it in a pack, they say, this isn't for my collection. I'm gonna sell it. The person that buys it holds on to that, or rather, I should say, either the person that pulled it in a pack or the initial buyer holds on to that 90% of the time. And that goes for the moments that we've released as recently as last week, but also the season one moments that have, in some instances, been on the platform for a year now. 90% of all of those have only been sold 0 or 1 times in the marketplace. So I think that tells us that, like, the marketplace really does do a good job of figuring out who wants to buy, a specific moment and getting it there in a pretty efficient manner.
All right, so actually, with that, that transitions to the next question, which is asking if there are plans within your role to help increase transparency, kind of like you've just done, providing, some statistics um, regarding marketplace and supply decisions. So, I know that in office hours previously, we've mentioned that we're making these decisions based on the data, but we don't really like have that data to present. And I know that you recently wrote a blog, but is this something that as we move forward, we can see that relationship kind of building forward in what you're doing?
Yeah, so a roadmap is of critical importance to us. I think we've talked about that publicly before, and our team's working diligently on how to best surface that. It's something I brought up in my that initial cover letter that I unsolicitedly mentioned sending earlier. Like, I had brought that up, but the team already knew that that was a goal and that was something we needed for future seasons. And we're aligned on working toward this goal, together. So we know we have to get it right though. We're learning about the hurdles and mapping out, like, all the what ifs and figuring out how to best navigate the what ifs, because we know that all the collectors, all of you all, need a roadmap in order to feel that you can confidently make purchases and determine what you might want to wait on, and plan out for yourselves what you want your collections to look like and how you're going to build them throughout a season. So, we're in it for the long run, and we feel like this roadmap will help keep you all aligned with us and set the expectations that can hopefully allow everyone to feel confident in building their collections, no matter what your starting point is, today. So, and also, like, it really ties back to the point of what we at Top Shot, but also like broadly at Dapper Labs, like are as a company. Like we're we have a collectible that exists on the blockchain, and the blockchain is transparent. You can see every transaction that takes place, um, but you can't see everything that's going on in our heads. So we want to get better at surfacing that content um, perspective more broadly and openly to everyone because you've put a lot of trust in us, and we want to make sure that we earn that.
So speaking of, kind of moving forward with making sure that we're delivering roadmaps to the future and helping people set realistic expectations about what it is where we're going and being transparent, where can we find direct communications like from you to the community? I know we mentioned that you recently started a Twitter, you wrote a blog. Like, how does this look for getting your information to the community?
Yeah, so on the Twitter, I will be not necessarily as active as some of our other official Top Shot accounts, but I will be active on Twitter when I think I have data that's relevant to surface in that format, and also going to start regularly trying to release blog posts. We don't have a specific schedule, and a little of that's going to have to be flexible on workflow. Because I definitely have editing help and directional advice on the types of topics that we want on the blog. But I I'm doing the writing for that, and I want it to be my voice conveying the data and making sure that that's transparent. So I'm going to it's some of the cadence is going to rely on exactly what my schedule looks like, unfortunately. But I think we're going to try to at least get another blog post out at some point next week. I can't commit to a specific date, but I've already started writing it. I'm just trying to fill it in with some of the hard data points that we definitely need and want to get better at making more public.
We'll get to see more charts and graphs.
Yeah, hopefully. We were on a little bit of a compressed timeline for this first one because we wanted to talk about the queue system before it actually happened, and I think we got it out maybe only 15 minutes before. But yeah, there should be more charts and graphs in the future.
Perfect. So now that we've done the overview, it was so long, we've used our half an hour so far to do the overview of who you are and what you're doing here. So let's talk about supply and economy because there are some pretty frequently asked questions in the community here. Starting with, something that we sort of addressed earlier on today, but can you touch on how supply is determined and your role in those decisions? So I'm talking like supply of moments specifically, and obviously those then go into packs, but like there's also a relationship there between packs and moments. So how
Yeah,
is it
so
determined?
even with even with moments, it's actually a little bit of a complex question because we have supply as it relates to different plays and supply as it relates to met size. So if we break it down, and I'll use this week's drop as an example, we had two different supply decisions. One, how many unique plays to use in the set, and two, what do we want the met size to be? And we considered both of those independently and how they'll work together. So if we were going to use more plays, we would have needed to trim the met size even more. So I I've been working on that for really certainly this set. Base set moments, not so much. We already had our supply decisions kind of in the pipeline. Anything new that came out, if it was a three-star rookie, it was getting men into 4,000. If it was a Top Shot first moment, it was getting men into 12,000. But going into season three, I expect um, to be one of the members determining met size there, but also unique players. And then additionally, I think it's important to probably talk about the common playoff set because I know that's been a set that's been pretty hotly debated within the community. especially in the total number of plays. There's been some concern around. I think we did pretty well with the Met size. I think that's actually been pretty well received. We see them at certainly the prices in the marketplace are they're a premium to a base set, um, but they're not priced so highly in most circumstances that I would consider them inaccessible to most people. Um, but yeah, we understood and we heard the pushback on the quantity of unique plays we used. And there are thinking, and this is something I worked again with Austin on, but also like a lot of stakeholders internally, including yourself, I know, Candy, and some of the other community team who are certainly not shy of voicing the concerns that you all hear. And really, you all are the best advocates, and everybody listening should know that like if you want people to advocate on your behalf internally at Top Shot, go to Candy, go to Jacob, go to Luke, go to Mo, go to all of the community team, and they every day bring your voices to us and make sure that we don't get stuck and thinking about things in too narrow of a fashion. But what we're thinking about here is really not just the fans that are on Top Shot right now, but if you're a Suns or a Bucks fan and you don't find Top Shot for another year or two, one of the most exciting things we think is going to be looking back at this season and remembering, hey, my team has not made the finals. Like, this is a way to memorialize that postseason. And like I even found myself, I'm a Hawks fan. I think I mentioned that earlier. And I was watching some of these games and thinking like, wow, I wish I could buy moments because as you know, we're not allowed to collect as Top Shot employees. But I was seeing those John Collins dunks in real time or Trey Young shush at MSG and thinking, I need that moment. And maybe mentioning the shush was a bad idea. If Jacob's on the line, he'll probably never let me take his spot in office hours again.
I
Um,
think he's on a plane, so you're safe. We won't let him get the recap.
okay, well, let's hope he doesn't. We might need to edit that out of the transcript. But yeah, I think we're thinking about especially the playoff set as a set for fans, and that's that's something that we expect people, and we have seen people engage very specifically around their favorite team. If your favorite team is the Bucks, you've been actively collecting Bucks moments. And if your favorite team was the Hawks, you've been actively collecting Hawks moments. And Knicks fans are collecting Knicks moments. And I think that's that's helpful in providing one of the many ways to collect. So we don't want to be super prescriptive in telling people this is the only way to collect. We want to give everyone multiple avenues to collect. And there's not a right way to be a collector on Top Shot. So we will, yeah, basically we just want to give people multiple ways to find their niche.
All right. And so, speaking of finding your niche, some of the things, and you mentioned the playoff set, which has had a lot of community sentiment kind of on both ends of the spectrum. But there's also, throughout the history of Top Shot, been some other packs, sets, rarity tiers, the numbers around either the packs themselves or the moments within. So, can you share some of the rationale for, the variance in those numbers and the learnings that we've had as we've gone through this?
Yeah, so I think probably the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about set variance is I think back to throwdowns, and I think about that specifically because I know that's probably one of the well, really the most discussed pack drop that I can recall. But also not just discussed by the community, discussed internally. Like there's not a week that goes by without us discussing some of the mistakes that we made in throwdowns and making sure that we do avoid and do not repeat those mistakes again. So I actually joined a little after throwdowns, so I understood that experience from the collector side. Actually, I was one of the many people in line. So I understand some of the pain points that that has caused throughout the community. And like you say, we're just striving to get better every day. Like we're not perfect. We are going to make mistakes. But I think we took a lot of those throwdown learnings and we applied them to, and then there were four packs. So we went to a little more cautious of a mint size, I would say. We minted these to 750 mint size, and then the set's just 10 moments and two rewards. So it's a very small, I feel like a very collectible set. Um, Fits neat and clean in within the rare tier, but it's not so restrictive that it prices all the collectors out. Like if you're a fan of one of the four teams that were in the end, then there were four packs. Like these feel like some of the best moments on Top Shot to me to put in your collection. So we're viewing it as it's definitely multifaceted, but at the end of the day, it's a collectible, and we want basketball fans all over the world to be able to connect with their favorite teams or players or moments they were in the arena for. And we want to make sure that we tie everything back to that connection and that collectability. Um, and we're figuring out ways to bring that back into focus. If you're a Lakers fan and you want LeBron James, we have to make sure that there are accessible LeBron James in the base set, and they should be minted to a size where you don't have to spend a mortgage payment to get it, even though it is LeBron James and he is the biggest draw. So we need the common set to fill out that niche. But we also want to make sure that we provide scarcity in the rare and legendary tiers. And if you want to show off how big of a Lakers fan or how big of a LeBron James fan that you are, and you have the means to do so, like by all means, like collect the very scarce 99 Met size legendary LeBron and collect the rare LeBrons, collect the MGLE, and we that goes back to what I said earlier in creating multiple ways to engage with Top Shot, and there's no one right way to collect. So we want to provide these different avenues for different collectors.
And so to follow up on that then, Justin, kind of we've talked about some of the learnings that we've had from packs and different set drops, but what about the trends over the last, year or since you've been here, I guess, which is about 6 months? What do those marketplace trends kind of mean for Top Shot going forward?
Yeah, so say I can speak to the last 6 months, both as a collector for four of those, and then 2 months on the other side as a Top Shot employee. But yeah, I'll stick to starting in January because that's where my first-hand timeline starts. And I think actually I joined, I think late January, maybe in the last 2 weeks of January somewhere. And at that point, there was like I would describe it as a healthy market. There wasn't a lot of supply, but there was a lot of price diversion, I would say. Like we had common moments, and I remember I made some sales at $1 of common moments, and but then we had legendaries and rares in the hundreds, sometimes thousands, and legendaries pretty much all in the thousands at that time. So it was we ran the gamut, and that at that point we really did have all those avenues for collecting. And I think some of you all almost certainly remember, like even in the first week of February, there was a bit of a lull, and prices did fall, and it it sounds silly now almost, but there was a period where people were calling it a bear market, and then like all of a sudden out of nowhere it seemed like, and I didn't even fully appreciate the catalyst at the time. Like overnight, it was just the market was going up every day for a couple weeks at a time, and prices got to just completely unhealthy and unsustainable levels. And I would love to say like, hey, I knew exactly at the time, but like anytime you're in what's like a sort of unsustainable uptrend. It does feel like it can go up forever, even though logically in the back of your head you know that it can't. So that was unhealthy, and it was going it was going to change at some point, no matter what. So at the point where the market-wide floor for the base set was $15 to $20 for some of the role players, I would say. Like that was a point, like when we talk about accessibility, that it was hard to it was hard to explain to people why a common base set moment, like why they had to pay $20 for it. And I think we all kind of knew in the back of our heads, myself as a collector. I don't pretend at this point to be speaking on behalf of the Top Shot team because I was not part of it. So this was me as a collector speaking here, just to be clear. But kind of knew that, like, hey, this isn't going to last forever. But who knows when it's going to end. So I think the Top Shot team, like, we knew that we had to make packs available again. And I think what I know from internal discussions is, like, there was never the intent of driving market prices down. Like, we don't want to drive market prices down with packs being released. But we do want to find a way to get moments in the hands of people who want them at an accessible price for the common base set. And then we can be a little more prescriptive with rare and legendary tiers. And unfortunately, like at that time, packs were being released and there wasn't a great distribution system. There were some issues with bad actors, and not everyone was here for like Top Shot the collectible. Um, so we need to focus on changing that, and like again, like figuring out how to reposition Top Shot as the collectible and as the way to express your fandom, but also as something that, like, collectibles do have value. Like that is part of what being a collectible means. So figuring out, like, where to go moving forward on that. And that just brings me back to what I've referenced a few times earlier. Like, we need to have different lanes to engage with Top Shot, and we need to we need to be clear in what our tiers mean, um, not just in what they mean in terms of mint count, but what they mean going forward. So yeah, I think we're focused on that.
All right, so actually, that's a good move to the next question then. Looking at kind of going forward, and historically, we've sort of had a reactivity, as you mentioned, of supply and demand and that fluctuation. But, we increased supplies, demand increased, and then there's been a little bit of, variance in the inverse. So whether, we're decreasing supply as perhaps the market feels like there's less demand, or, how we're looking at that for Series 3, for example. Like, what can you tell us about that relationship with the reactivity of supply and demand?
Yeah, so I think that's a little tricky, and hopefully I'm not going to be overly nuanced here. But I think there's a little bit of nuance that's important in that, like, demand and price are definitely inextricably linked, but they're not synonyms. So I want to be clear to, like, distinguish those two. They're going to be correlated, but they're not the exact same thing. And then I also want to talk about demand in two ways: primary demand and secondary demand. And how I define those is primary demand's like the demand for packs. That's the demand for moments sold by Top Shot at a set price to everyone who's listening to this right now, the collectors. And this, we see this demand is still pretty high. And we had initially set out a year ago, to let people, we had hoped to let people buy as many packs as they wanted in different rarity tiers, kind of on an ongoing basis. But it's become abundantly clear well before I joined the team that that's not going to be a feasible path forward. So we're going to have to manage that primary demand and address it through constraining supply, and really constraining demand artificially, by, at least for the foreseeable future, um, making sure that individuals can't buy unlimited amount of packs. Like maybe there's a world where you can buy more than one, yes, but there's not a world where you can buy thousands and thousands at once. And we have seen that demand be pretty healthy. There's people asking if they can buy more than one, and so far we haven't let them do so. Um, but then a lot of times when we hear demand, and I think this is more what you were referencing, would be what I would term secondary demand. And what I mean by that is moments sold on the marketplace, from one collector to another collector. And I think that's also a very fair way to look at demand, like that is a completely, valid and equally important, if not more important, to many of us, way to look at demand. And the reality is for many of our collectors, they want specific moments, right? Like they want their favorite players, they want their favorite teams, and you can't guarantee that you get that in a pack. So you have to go to the marketplace, and the only way to buy a moment is to actually get it in the marketplace. So I actually think, like, and this is not my professional opinion, but I think that's the more fun way to collect. Like that's how I collected. I collected my favorite teams and I collected my favorite players, and it wasn't about just getting packs and figuring out the best way to play Top Shot that way. I wanted to collect the people I liked watching. Um, so we really have two different lanes here, and I think we have collectors that use both lanes as their primary method. Some of those do indeed like to collect, mostly from packs, and then others like to collect mostly from the marketplace. I would venture a guess, definitely don't have real data on this, but I would venture a guess most people that are tuned into office hours are in the latter category. Like you all are a very, very highly engaged, set of collectors and spend a lot of time in the marketplace for the most part, I would guess. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of both sets of collectors. Like it's our job as Top Shot to make sure that the people who are engaged with the Shot marketplace and do want to be collecting specific moments, have confidence in the product, and that goes back to needing a roadmap and needing to lay out, what we plan to do from the future to make sure that we give you all that confidence. So I think, yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is that, like, when thinking of demand, like, we think every moment that we put onto Top Shot is important. But that doesn't mean that every moment is important to every collector. So, so we want to make sure that every collector can find moments important to them, but we don't want anyone to feel obligated to collect every single moment on Top Shot. But
So,
in order to convey that, we need to get better at our communication and specifically communicating scarcity, both in terms of unique players and scarcity within tiers.
and so I guess a good follow-up to that then, Justin, is, since you mentioned that, you would encourage people to collect, the players, the moments that they're excited about, but also finding ways to encourage scarcity. This seems like a perfect point to talk about trade tickets. So, can you explain to us, from an economic perspective, what's the logic behind the trade ticket system? Is it deflationary? How will demand be created for the traded in moments? Like, how does this work that, if I have moments that I really don't want in my collection because they're a rival team and I just can't have it? Like, can I toss them in here and find extra value? How does that affect the economy? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, so to your point, they are definitely deflationary. The general idea around them is that any collector can turn in any moment. And this obviously is once the feature is rolled out. We don't have this yet on the site. But once the feature is rolled out, you'll be able to turn in any moment you want for a single trade ticket. And these all act as kind of an alternate currency within the Top Shot universe. So they'll provide access to certain things, including ultimately the packs containing those season one moments that we've talked about before, but also packs of the moments that other collectors have turned in. But the important thing to realize is these packs of moments that other people have turned in won't cost 3 tickets for 3 moments. It's not going to be a one-to-one relationship. It'll be somewhere over 1 ticket per moment. I don't know exactly what that value is. It'll be, it won't be like 100, but it'll be 4 or 5 or 6. So we don't expect people to really want to use trade tickets for these packs right away. So we'll probably make them available in short order. And maybe some people buy them with trade tickets because hey, we know it's fun to rip packs. Like who doesn't like opening a pack? Um, but the idea behind that is that over time, like the moments traded in, they'll carry more value at a later date. So at some point, value will catch up to the price of the packs, and the price meaning how many trade tickets it cost, and people start to purchase them. And then we're willing to sit on these for a while. So if it takes months or years for them to be purchased, like we're perfectly content with that timeline. I think. We'll see how it goes, but like right now, that's the thinking. So it would be deflationary, and it would take supply out of the economy for potentially long periods of time until people come along and say we value these moments enough to put them back in circulation.
And so just to be clear, I think because how how we've, kind of presented this feels a little bit extreme almost. Um, for trade tickets, we're going to be having people trading in moments that, they're not super pumped about having a collection or, trying to look for, you know, a value gain by trading them in and then getting something cool or, kind of more exclusive because you can only get it via this route. And you, mentioned it's deflationary because Top Shot is willing to hold this in. So obviously, we've mentioned that people trade in their moments. We can create new packs from them, but at a kind of sliding scale. So there's always more in our account kind of holding, which takes them out of the marketplace, which then should give the moments that are still in circulation higher demand. Is that correct?
Well, it wouldn't really. It's mostly correct. I would have a small quibble with the last point in that like it won't impact demand, but it will impact supply. So the circulating supply is really what's relevant, and I think it's important to pay attention to, and why we added it to the website itself on the moment page where you can see circulating supply, because that's really the amount of moments that are theoretically available for purchase at a given time, whether they're listed or owned by someone else who might be a willing seller at a price. So as that supply shrinks, there's less possible sellers, and that less possible sellers for a static or dynamic amount of demand, but dynamic in either direction, is really what could impact price.
Okay, and so I think that's definitely important to, kind of have that takeaway that we are looking at not just minting counts and kind of the roadmap moving forward in terms of creating supply that is, matched with the demand, but also finding ways to increase scarcity within the product itself. And we're not going to cover burning and staking today. Those are topics that are covered in other office hours, in very brief detail because we haven't rolled out those mechanics yet. And perhaps you and I, Justin, can do another office hours later once we have more details to share about that. But for the community, yes, I've seen them been asking about burning staking. I just want to make sure like that's not something that's on our topic today because we're actually at the hour mark. So I think
It's
the
it's on our
last
radar, but we don't have any updates anyway. So
yeah. So I would say the last question is kind of maybe the most relevant for where we're at with office hours is, how does the community feedback factor into the supply and the economy decisions? Because one of the greatest things about our community is we get a lot of feedback, and we've got a lot of really passionate collectors who have strong feelings, just like you. I mean, that's why I joined the team too, because we were really excited about the product and want to make it better, and that's why we get the feedback. So how does that feedback kind of factor into the decisions that you and the team are making?
yeah, I mean, it's absolutely critical, because I and everyone else within Top Shot consistently bug you and Jacob and Luke and everyone else on the team to make sure that we get that feedback on a reliable and consistent basis. And I would strongly recommend that anyone listening to this keep voicing your opinions, whether good or bad, in Discord, and we do read them. We do get data on them. I know we've been looking at getting more concrete data as well in the form of surveys. So those have been helpful and are hopefully going to be helpful moving forward. Um, and also just like I sometimes try to think of it through, I was a collector before I worked here, so I try to put on that hat and think about what I would want out of Top Shot if I was on the other side. But ultimately, like, to me, all demand is like it's how collectors as a whole express their sentiment with their wallet. So collector sentiment, collector feedback, like ultimately it ties in directly like to my job and my job description. Like it's critically important. So we're looking at collector feedback, but we're also looking at data and like where where there's divergence in the data and the feedback. That's where we do deeper dives and figure out what's working and what's not. So we're making sure to look at those in conjunction with one another. And yeah, like I said, anyone listening here, I would say, yeah, keep expressing it. That's how we're going to grow. That's how we're going to make Top Shot a better place for everyone. And don't be shy. The community team internally advocates on y'all's behalf consistently every single day. So we like hearing your voices, and we look forward to hopefully hopefully making sure that you all feel that you're heard going forward. Um,
That is definitely always our goal and kind of building the product together because that's the, I would say, only way to really make something that is super amazing is making sure you're building it for the people who are collecting it and, who we want to be collecting it in the future. And you kind of have to have all of the pieces in place. So getting the feedback early and regularly is important. Um, with that, Justin, now that we've hit that hour mark, I want to make sure that you get back to your meetings because you've got a lot of work to do. But I really appreciate you coming and joining us today and taking over for Jacob and sharing all of the, supply economy overview that you are going to be continue working on, with the community and with the team.
yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope it was. I think it was a productive conversation, but I look forward to, like I said, gathering that feedback and seeing what the community says.
And there's a lot of feedback and a lot of requests for further deep dives into specific topics. So I've been taking notes on those and we'll be slacking you with the information here once we close up. To the community, thank you so much for listening and joining us today for office hours. We will make sure to get the recording on YouTube for those who maybe want to recap it. But as always, reach out to us with, questions, comments, concerns, things that you have that you feel like we need to know. Much appreciated, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Candy.